So this is, I think, the first time with the Indigenous Americas that we have an artist name. Now, obviously, all the work we've looked at has been made by people, by artists. But this is the first time, I think, in Content Area 5, we have the artist name. So the people group that made this come from the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming. Shoshone is the people group. And the artist name, right, is pronounced Kosiko. Kosiko. Now, his nickname is Kadzi Cody, which is up there. So either of those would work for artist name. Again, look at condition for objects to help you determine the date, right? So this is going to be late, right around the turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s. And it is a painted elk hide. So this is a piece of elk hide that has been an elk was skinned and then tanned, stretched, and painted. And we can tell that this object is post-contact. We talked about post-contact the other day because it has the brighter colors in it. So as you guys look at that blue and that yellow on this painting, you can tell, hopefully, that this is going to be a manufactured color pigment, not just something from nature. So Painted Elk Hide. The title and the media are the same. So it should be very straightforward for you. This is a traditional object for the Shoshone people to create work that is a painted hide. These had different purposes. One of the functions of this object is a decorative function. One of the functions is practical. They were hung inside of teepees they could be hung inside of teepees to add extra warmth. Another, probably the most important function of this object is going to be that it was created to be used with an oral recitation of a history or a story, right? So this is going to be an object that would be used in storytelling. It helps record history and it helps tell the past to contemporary audiences. Another big function of this work is to sell. And so these objects were made as things that could be important and vital to the people group, right? The indigenous people group, but also they were sold as souvenirs to people who are not indigenous who come to visit the reservation, which was something that was pretty common in the early 1900s. So one of the intentions behind this work is the artist, right, Kosiko or Kadzi Cody, is affirming his native identity here. And so this is done with stencils, and that's why there's so much similarity between those kind of hard edge shapes, but then also through freehand. So he's using both freehand and stencil to create this work. It shows two different dances. And those dances are, again, going to be rituals that are affirming the community, affirming their identity as a community. Men and women could paint hides, but teepees, when it came to actually painting teepees, most of that was done by men. Sometimes we'll see these objects used as robes. Okay, so that's another intention. So think about it like a blanket, a robe, a wall hanging, something that could be decorative or functional. Here's a picture of Kosiko that I put in there because I think it's interesting that we have the artist here, his photo. This is a time period of change because this is a picture here. The photograph here is of the reservation where he lived in Wyoming. And so this is not his people's land, right, where they actually lived. They have been pushed west After the Indian Removal Act, right, you have all these different groups being pushed west, and so he's been displaced, right? And so this art of a displaced people, and so figuring out how to make a living for themselves, figuring out how to sustain themselves, right, as a shelter, creating shelter here, but then also keeping their history, their native identity alive. I also put a link in here. I'm not going to play it right now, but I put a link in here for a antique roadshow from you know, PBS or whatever, where they are looking at a painted elk hide. Now, it's not, I don't believe, by Cosico, but it's a similar object. Here is a photo from the Wind River Reservation. Trade, so you would say converging cultures as well, because it does have the post-contact materials for the dyes. But this is going to be, as the reservations really became like trade stops, resettlements, but then also tourist places where, again, indigenous people would go and visit. They would purchase things made by the indigenous people, and then it'd be like a souvenir. There's a little bit closer up view. Again, we're talking about paint and dye on top of a piece of leather. So the surface is not going to be pristine. The two rituals being depicted here are the sun dance and the wolf dance. Now, the sun dance was actually forbidden. And the reason it's forbidden is it is religious. It's a religious ritual. It's looking to the creator God. The wolf dance was okay because it wasn't viewed as religious. And so just like we saw with the potlatch ceremony and the transformation mask, the Kwakwaka'wakw people from British Columbia, there's going to be a push by Christians and by both the Canadian government and here the United States government to minimize the indigenous rituals so that there's a little bit more control there. It also has some scenes of everyday life. You can see who the chief is with the largest headdress. You can see the really stylized depiction of the horses with these long kind of tapered necks. Right, so this is definitely stylized. The yellow are, of course, teepees. Again, you can tell that he's using stencils as well as freehand. All right.